Hey everybody, Derek here again. I'm here to bring you another video for our Walking Dead countdown to the Season 5 premiere. If you are watching this video, that means that we are exactly 48 days away from Walking Dead Season 5. And as I said, when we got down to 51 days, I was going to do an episode review for all of the episodes in order to help us count down those last 51 days. So today's episode review is going to be Season 1, Episode 4, which is Vatos. It was the fourth episode of the first season. Basically, it was like the latter half of it because the first season was only 6 episodes. So this was definitely a great episode. Again, the one thing I like about season 1 is that, again, it kept moving and moving and moving, and it had great storylines. It had great character interactions. They knew that with 6 episodes, they could not mess around. You can't just waste time. And they really did a great job of, keeping it going and keeping it very interesting. And Vatos is definitely a great episode. So I'm going to go over some of my thoughts on it, some of the major plot points. So if you're, for some reason, just starting Walking Dead and you don't want to be spoiled, please do not watch this video at this time, as it will contain spoilers on the episode. Thank you. Okay. So, as we know, the episode was called Vatos, and I guess that from research that I have understood, Vatos or Vato is a Hispanic term, and basically the group of men that Rick, Daryl, Glenn, and T-Dog run into are Hispanic men that are basically guarding a group of elderly men, women, children that were at a nursing home and their family members. So that's why the episode is called that. When we first pick up, the Daryl, Rick, Glenn, and T-Dog are on the hunt for Merle, and because Merle severed his hand in order to escape the roof because he didn't think anybody was coming back. So they track him through the building, but they realize that Merle may be nearby, but they also came for the guns, and they need to get the guns. So they're able to. Glenn is able to form a plan in order to help them get the guns out of the street, because Glenn is very familiar with the area. He really does a great. That's the thing about Glenn, is he really shows a lot of initiative, and he really is able to get a plan laid out, go, here's what we're going to do, bam, and does it. I mean, he really is a quick thinker, somebody that is very beneficial to the group, and he definitely shows that. Now, of course, not all great plans go very well. They never expected that a young group of individuals would find this bag, and they end up fighting Miguel and Felipe, two of the Vatos group members, for the guns. Felipe ends up getting shot in the rear end by Daryl's crossbow, and they end up taking Glenn hostage, and then Rick ends up with the guns. Now, they go to the place where they're holding Glenn, and basically there's a standoff at first, and the leader, G, or Guillermo, basically states that either they hand over the guns, because he's taking claim over him. He goes, hey, there's a bag sitting in the middle of the road, we want it, and you stole it from us. And Rick's like, no, these are my guns. I brought them from Kentucky. They're mine. So they're fighting over it, which is understandable. Guns in The Walking Dead are still valuable, especially during the early days, because you're still trying to figure out how to use other weapons to get rid of walkers. Guns are probably beneficial at the beginning because they're longer range. You don't have to get up close to a walker, which can be very dangerous. So, I mean, guns are very beneficial for defense against people and against walkers. And basically, they're told either bring the guns back or come locked and loaded. Well, Rick, remembering that Glenn saved his life the other day, decides he's going in locked and loaded. He is willing to give his life for Glenn because Glenn saved his. He even tells Daryl right off the bat, he says, hey, whatever life I have left, I owe to Glenn, because Glenn stuck his neck out, and he promised he would do the same. Rick made good on that promise. Now, thankfully, things didn't seem all, because again, they don't know what's going on. As far as they know, it's just a bunch of guys that are terrible and, the worst of the worst that you can think of. And when they go there, they go locked and loaded. They all have guns pointed at each other, and suddenly this elderly woman comes out looking for Felipe, who's her grandson, and she starts talking about that one of the patients, Mr. Gilbert, is having breathing problems, and Rick's like, "What's this old lady doing here? What is going on? Something doesn't feel right." He's Rick being a cop, he knows when something's not all that it seems. Cops have a good instinct on that. And he knows there's something going on here. So the group, doesn't fire because they're not going to kill each other while there's a old lady there. And basically, Abuela is able to defuse the situation and takes them to Glenn. And that's when Rick and the group find out that these men were actually taking care of the elderly. Guillermo was a custodian in the place, and Felipe was a nurse. Everybody else in that nursing home abandoned them. I mean, basically, and that's an unfortunate thing. It's definitely hard for them as a group to take care of all of them, because you need medicine, which it's going to have for a little bit, but I mean that's going to run out after a while. You need food, you need supplies, and it's tough. I mean, taking care of people that are bedridden and sick is definitely a hard challenge, and I applaud Guillermo and his men for taking on that challenge. I mean, that's something that definitely has a lot of guts, that they would be willing to do that. And Rick realizes that. Rick goes, "Hey, they are sticking their necks out for these people, doing a great thing." Which, it's easy for you to be like, "Well, we're going to abandon all these old people. They live their lives out. We're just going to let the walkers get them. Hey, it keeps the walkers away from me." And I mean, that's just how some people are going to, feel in a Walking Dead world. They're not going to want to carry along that dead weight or baggage or whatever they may feel it to be. I mean, I'd like to think that I would, want to preserve every human life possible, but when you're in a situation like that, I mean, that's the only time you're going to know how you're going to act. But, Rick recognizes that Guillermo, Felipe, and his men are doing a great thing. They're protecting these people. They're taking care of them. They are giving them the life that they deserve to live, even near the end. Because some of them may only have a few days left. I mean, even with the way them taking care of them, they need more care, like around the clock care. And that's what hospitals and elderly folk home are needed. That's what they do for people. Some people need care several times during an hour or a day or whatever. I mean, it's important. So Rick hands over about half the guns, and they start to go back to the campsite to make sure that they can be there, be safe, because night's coming. And while they were dealing with this, there was a lot going on back at camp at this time, mostly focusing on Jim. And Jim is all of a sudden starting to dig holes in the campsite, which look like graves. And Dale's like, "What is he doing?" He tries to say, calm Jim down, like, "Hey Jim, let's go and get a drink of water, sit down. It's a hot day," which it was hot. I mean, it looked hot for sure. And Jim's just in a state. And Shane and the rest of the group end up diffusing the situation. Jim definitely, I think that what ends up happening with Jim is, he talks about that he had a dream that, a couple different things happened. He can't remember all of it, but he remembers that Rick and Carl were there, and, that he was digging graves. And, I mean, what ends up happening, I think, with Jim is that, the heat got to him, the stress of being in the Walking Dead world, and plus, he was still in mourning. And I just think that he had a psychotic breakdown for a little while, which is completely understandable, because Jim flat out says, while Shane basically, is able to get the shovel away from him and just, I mean, he tackles him to the ground, but, he handles him as best he could. Not like Ed, he has more control over the situation, and Shane recognizes the restraint that is needed. But Jim lost his family in the Walking Dead apocalypse, and he even says that it's the same thing in the comics. The comic Jim and the TV series Jim are pretty much the same. It's just that in the comics, Jim never had a psychotic breakdown like this. And what ends up happening is they tie him up, but only for his own benefit, And sometimes you do have to restrain people. It's just like any other situation where if somebody's having a psychotic breakdown, or could hurt somebody, could hurt themselves. Sometimes it's best that you have to restrain them in some way. So, they tie him to the tree, but they do make sure that he gets care. They make sure he gets water. And, I mean, Jim eventually starts to feel a little better. I think all he needed was just to sit down for a little bit, kind of get over the stress of the dream, and just, remembering that his family is dead. And that's a hard thing, and especially during the beginning, you're going to have to deal with all those things. And he definitely was trying to, but it was definitely a hard moment for him. And then you also have Amy and Andrea's conversation. Definitely was very nice to see these two and the bonds that they had, but how different they were. Because they're in the boat talking about their parents, and it's definitely a touching scene. Them sitting out on the water, but recognizing like how different they were, how their father raised them differently. Like Andrea would catch the fish to eat them. With her father, like they caught the fish for food, but Amy was more the one who wanted to let the fish go. So the father basically changed the way that he raised them, because that they are 12 years apart, if I'm not mistaken. I know it's a significant amount, whereas in the comics they're only 2 years apart, I think it is. But it was nice to see that sisterly bond, and it made it even tougher for at the end of the episode. And the end of the episode is definitely a very devastating one, but it also, again, it reinforces why why a zombie apocalypse is a dangerous place. In the last episode, they had that one walker come up into the campsite, and thankfully it was distracted by Daryl's deer that he shot. But this time there's nothing to distract the walkers, and there's not just one of them, there's probably like at least 20 or more that come into the campsite. Now, they're taken off guard, obviously, and Amy ends up getting bit when she's coming out of the RV. And not that it really affected us too much one way or the other. We probably inside were going, not for Amy, but Ed, the first casualty of the camp attack is Ed. And Ed's still recovering from his beating. And I mean, I think he could have gone out. I don't think he was really that debilitated. I think he was just so sour at everybody that he didn't want to go out and communicate with anybody. He couldn't even stand to look at Shane, I think. He was a whipped man at that point. But he just wanted to stay in the tent. And he ends up getting eaten by the walkers. He was the first casualty. I mean, we didn't really care. I mean, the actor did a good job of portraying Ed again. I think that he did a very good job. But again, Ed is portrayed as a not very likable character. And if you got to pick somebody that gets eaten by walkers, hey, that's fine. Let the wife abuser get eaten. Not a problem. So Ed gets eaten, and unfortunately Amy gets bitten. And several of our background survivors also get bitten, eaten, etc. And they're starting to defend the camp. And they only have 2 guns. They have Shane's shotgun and they have Dale's rifle. And then of course Jim and Morales grab bats and start to kill a couple of the walkers that way. But you can see how the enormous amount of walkers that come into the camp, it's just not, that is, keeping them somewhat safe, but it's also very risky. I mean, Morales was going left and right, hitting them, but they were still coming and coming. And that's the thing, is it's like, well, they only had very limited amount of supplies in order to defend themselves. And you see how the conflict earlier about Shane, because Shane and Rick were arguing about whether they should leave or not in Tell It to the Frogs. Rick was like, first we need these guns, and he also went there because he needed to get the radio for Morgan, because he needed to keep his problems with Morgan. But you see how if they wouldn't have had the guns, they may not have survived. Like, if they all would have stayed up at the campsite and left Merle, and that's that, and those walkers came, well, does 4 men, 5 men with baseball bats really make a difference? It's hard to say. I mean, you can't really say one way or the other. I mean, if they would have been there, maybe less people would have died. I mean, people may have died, but they may have been able to hold off the walkers enough that they could have all gotten into the RV and drove away, possibly. Or, again, they might have been able to fend off the walkers, maybe had less people die. But because of the fact that they did get the guns, on the other hand, Rick, Daryl, T-Dog, and Glenn are able to put a quick stop to the carnage going on at the camp. They're able to kill all the remaining walkers, save, Shane, Laurie, and Carl, Sophia, and Carol, Morales and his family, Dale, Andrea. A lot of the people end up getting saved because of it. So again, and I like how in the next episode, and I don't want to get too much into it, but Laurie basically says, because again, Shane and Rick are still at odds about whether they should have went or not, and Laurie was saying about how neither of them is completely wrong or right, and that shows. I mean, again, as I said, it could have gone either way. If they had been there, they might have still all died because again, what's 5 men with baseball bats going to do when you got 4 or 5 men with guns? It makes a difference, I think. But on the other hand, the numbers game, if they would have had those 4 men there, maybe they could have killed more walkers, and it might have, they might have ended up okay. You never know. But in the end, we do have to say goodbye to Amy because she does get bit on the arm and she does get bit on the neck, and it's a very sad scene. And I mean, it's sad to see her in that state, and Andrea just leaning over, going, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, and there really is nothing that you can do. And I think that what made it more devastating is that it was Amy's birthday. And Andrea back at the department store when they were in Guts took like this mermaid necklace, I believe it was, for her sister. And that's just like an extra kick in the gut, like to have your sister die that way on her birthday before you could even give her her gift is sad. I mean, I can understand her sorrow at losing her sister. And it's just a very solemn moment at the end whenever everybody, is just standing there realizing that Amy's dead. And it definitely does have an effect on everybody. And the big thing about this episode, like the reason why I like it at the end, is that it's the big reminder as they look around at all, like they pan out and you see all the walker bodies mixed in with the people, like the camp survivors that died. And it gives you that reminder. The Walking Dead world is not a safe place. It's not a great place. They were not safe up in those mountains. And you're really never 100% safe anywhere. You're really not. And that's just the key. And it re-emphasizes that point. It's that reminder for everybody. Hey, this world is not safe. We lost group members. And it really doesn't matter who you are. At any time, no matter how nice you are, no matter how tough you are, you may end up being one of those people that die. I mean, Amy was a sweetheart. I loved Amy. I think that she was a very good character. Definitely a very attractive young lady. It's hard to see someone like that get killed on a TV show or on a zombie apocalypse. It is. But again, it re-emphasizes to us as the audience and to the group members, we're not afraid to kill characters off, no matter how likable they are. If that's what's needed to be done to re-emphasize the harshness of this world, then they were going to do it. And I think that it definitely left you off with feeling a lot of emotions as well as ready for the next episode. I mean, we were ready to get back there and see how everything was going to fall out between everybody. So I think, again, it was a great episode. They did a great job with the zombie action at the end. You had a lot of great, action sequences with Shane and with the guys coming back. And again, I just think that they keep it moving, they keep it interesting, they keep showing various things, they develop the characters. They did a great job. None of the episodes in season 6 are bad episodes. They're not. They're all great. They all do a great job of really giving you an exciting story, and I feel that it helped set the standard for Walking Dead, and it helped keep the interest growing. And I hope that it continues to grow. I always tell people all the time, hey, if you're not watching the show, watch it, because it's a great show. Definitely worth your time. It is a very great show. Thank you again, everybody. I want to thank everybody that has subscribed, has been watching the videos. I just got my first video to 100 views, and I appreciate that, guys. I'm glad I'm able to get some information out there to help everybody, whether you're passing time, whether you want to watch and get some information, whether you want to see predictions, whatever the case may be. I'm glad I'm able to do that for everybody. Again, Walking Dead is a big passion of mine. I really like it. and I'm really looking forward to this season. So thank you again, everybody. I appreciate it, and I really all hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.